Hello, hello, lovelies. Welcome to the Sacred Unweaving podcast. I am Holly Hope, and we are diving into embracing the beauty of perspective and unraveling sacred truths in order to weave a more embodied human experience. I have with me today the beautiful and brilliant Melanie VanMatre. She is a master of integrative healing arts and a practitioner of sacred healing perspective technique, as well as a life coach, a sacred drum ceremony facilitator, and really dives into a lot of the holistic approaches with healing the body, the mind, and the soul. And she is a soul sister of my own heart. She is a master at utilizing and navigating grief to build gifts and open yourself up to a new life that you may not have expected before. So thank you for being on with us today, Melanie.
Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
Now, Melanie, you have some very intense experiences around grief, and I think things that most people wouldn't quite bounce back from. So I would love if you would share some of your story with grief and how it's been such an integral part in you being able to open up yourself to your spiritual gifts and to supporting others.
I was engaged 10 years ago, actually 10 years ago this year, and he passed away unexpectedly from some stuff with his heart that he was born with. Oh, it knocked the wind right out of me. And I spent probably the first 12 months just trying to figure out who I was now and like my new normal and navigating grief. And I came to a spot where I was just stuck. I wasn't moving forward anymore. I didn't know how to move forward anymore. And I started seeking a more holistic approach to healing. I went to my first sound bath. I sought out psychic mediums for messages from him. I had a session with you in 2019. I'm like, that just popped up on Facebook. And I just started to find a different way to move through my grief. And through that, it started to unlock things within me. And then when people would come into my circle that had also experienced grief, I was able to relate to them in a different way, but also help them see their grief in a different way. Help them understand that what you're feeling is not wrong. Like, it's your grief. It gets to be what it is because it's yours. Nobody grieves the same way. To be blunt, grief is a bitch. And I call her she shows up when she wants to. And, you can be going about your day and all of a sudden you're a bawling mess on the floor and you don't know why, and then it's like, oh, that's why. It's that, that grief that just pops in. And so I've definitely been able to figure out how to navigate it. And it's recently this year, not even 3 months ago, losing my grandma and then my dad within the same week, literally 4 days apart from each other, how I've been able to navigate that grief, it's been very beautiful. And losing them, not so beautiful, but the way I've been able to support the people in my life that have never lost someone and show up in a different way. And just the way that I see death is completely different than it was 10 years ago. I can honor the anger that I have for losing my dad and being really angry about that. And I can find the gratitude in that anger. This journey, as hard and as dark as some of the parts of it have really helped me to see the beauty in loss, and not just actual death, but the death and rebirth that we go through all the time, right? Because we're always ever changing. I would not be the person that I am today had I not gone through all of the things that I went through 10 years ago. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And if I could bring him back for his kids' sake alone, I would in a heartbeat. How I came to be able to process and get through it, and the gratitude I can express for the lessons I learned from that grief, it's brought me to a whole other place in my life that I wouldn't be here otherwise.
You have the unexpected passing of your fiance, which also I think it's really powerful that people know how shocking that was, because you were in bed together when he passed. And so to wake up to that, And that shock with your dad and your grandmother, was there a shock as well, or was it a little bit expected?
My grandmother, we were able to say goodbye. We knew she was passing. And so that was I don't want to say it was a beautiful thing because it wasn't beautiful, but it was beautiful that we all got to say goodbye, that I got to, my mom and I spent the night with her, like in her room with her, and being able to be there to support my mom in losing her mom. That, as hard as all of that was, I was able to be strong for my mom and just be there to literally hold her and just love her and be so grateful for my grandma and for my mom. My dad was very unexpected. I mean, it was unexpected and not unexpected. He had needed a heart, like his heart was not good, but he'd been doing good for a really long time, taking his medication, but like his everyday Facebook post was smoking a Diet Coke. Like those were his vices, like smoking a Coke. And so it was unexpected in the sense that he had seemingly been living a fairly normal life, but he hadn't quit smoking and, on a regular basis, just ate peanut butter sandwiches for like 2 out of 3 meals a day. So not taking the best care of himself, but also we definitely were not expecting him to pass. And so that unexpectedness and the trauma that I experienced waking up next to my person in bed and not breathing, I could relate to my brother finding my dad because my brother lived with my dad. And so it's been a process for all of us. And I feel like I've had moments, me and my brothers, we've all had moments where our dad has been with us. And I am a super believer in that. I didn't know how my brothers were gonna, but I've told both of them, he's with you. Like, Brian, he's with you. He's at your house. He was living with you. And so moments with my nieces and nephews where they're little, where things have happened and my brother's like, that was dad. I know that was dad. We've all at different times when we've needed it the most, he's been there. And there have been things that have happened, the morning I woke up and it was like probably the hardest morning I'd had since he had passed. And I just heard him clear as day. He could have been standing right behind me say, "It's okay, Melba. I'm okay, Melba." And because he always called me Melba, but and I know without a doubt, I turned around thinking my dad was going to be standing right behind me, and so those different perspectives for me that I've gained over this time of like the things I've learned about when we pass and where we are and those types of messages that I've received from the other side. He was a huge train. He loved model trains and trains in general. And I've seen trains more since he passed than I ever did before in places, long stretches of driving to St. George. Never seen a train. I didn't even know there was a train track in this one stretch of highway. And I'm just thinking about my dad and about things as I'm driving. And I look over and I'm like, oh, hi. He's with me. Like, there's a train right there on this road I've driven on quite a few times and never seen a train before. Like an actual train moving down a track I didn't even know was there. And so like that's happened to me multiple times since he passed. And I just like, that's my dad's thing. And it brings you peace, right? It brings me peace. And part of the gifts I've been able to help other people with that have come to me like for grief.
So I love that when people are in a session with you with the sacred perspective healing technique, you're able to unlock and really pin dot some of these things. And especially like the heart, I really want to dive into that for a second, if we may, because I didn't realize that both your fiance and your father passed away with heart conditions, and my mother-in-law and my mama Kay both passed away with the heart, and both were shocking. And my mother-in-law, we found out later, she had stopped taking her heart medication. And so there was some anger for that because she could have been alive. And at the time, I had a 4-month-old baby, and I honestly do not remember their first year. because I was just in so much overwhelming grief. So a couple things, like one of the things that I wanted to point out was when we have heart conditions, typically it's because of those broken heart wounds that we don't heal and stuffing emotion into the heart space. And, again, the body reflects what's going on emotionally and energetically, but then also those emotions and energy can cause a weakness in the body. And as I look at both of these women in my world, my mother-in-law, she had been through divorce after 43 years of marriage, and his new girlfriend had passed away. And so her ex-husband was living in the same house in a separate room. And just to be able to see that over and over again, I can only imagine what her heart was feeling. And then my Mama Kay, there were some things that kind of came out after she passed, and some real deep heartaches that she'd been carrying and some wounds. And that really hit me. And it also gave me this deep mission within myself to make sure I heal every wound of the heart. I don't want anything in there that doesn't belong in there, opening our hearts to receive, because if we allow ourselves to hold that in, then I potentially could have that happen to me. Even though neither of them were my biological family, I really got this deep knowing, like this impression of, Holly, this is what happens when you don't heal your heart. Your heart will give up. So I kind of had some shock with it. And both of them later came to me in a dream. With the men in your life with heart, do you feel like that resonated too, that they have things that were trapped in the heart space, or what have you found with it?
It does. It definitely does. I know that there was definitely heart space stuff for Carl as far as like his divorce, not getting as much time with his kids after the divorce. That definitely weighed heavy on his heart, regardless of. And then with my dad, for sure. My dad, he wore his heart on his sleeve. Like, he was the type of person that would give you the shirt off his back, even if it was the only shirt he owned. Like, if you needed it more than he did, he would give it to you. But I would say there were definitely some heart wounds there that I don't know that he ever fully healed.
Because then my next question is, well, why would somebody not heal their heart, right? I think sometimes we don't, because when we receive love, we receive it in through the back. That's why it feels like we're being stabbed in the back. And as we express love and feel love, and it comes out the front. So we open our hearts to start expressing and feeling love. And then all those wounds start coming through that were stuck in the heart. And it starts to like let out this debris. And then we go, oh, wait, actually, I don't like this. And so we start to close our heart off again. Have you experienced anything with that?
I spent a lot of time hurting other people because I was not in a good headspace. I don't want to say because I was hurt, but I mean, I was hurt, not wanting to open myself up. I was pretty broken. I felt very broken. I don't feel broken now. And I know that I wasn't broken then. I was just a little damaged, and
your wounds were just showing.
Yeah.
All those
a little bruised, but I had to let go of the regret that I had for hurting other people after everything that I went through. And when he had passed away, I spiraled in a not good way for myself or for anyone that was in my space. And there are a couple of people that I hurt bad, that I definitely was holding on to the regret of that for a really long time, and realized that my need to give them closure was actually very selfish and for me. And so I had to really examine myself, forgive myself for that time of my life when I made those choices, and realize that it's okay. You did the best you could. Like, giving myself some compassion and some grace. Those have been things that have been a common theme for me, even still.
And I love that you talk about that self-forgiveness, because sometimes we think part of forgiving myself is I have to like admit what I did and like bring it up and apologize for it. And I remember I had this lover that had a really, really big wound, a really big secret. And Spirit had told me that there was something they were supposed to tell me in order to heal. And I'm oblivious. And I looked at him in the eye and I was like, you have something to tell me. And nope, no, I don't. 2 years later, it finally comes out. I'm now processing it 2 years later, but I'm already over it, like you said. And I realized, right. I was like, actually, now I'm really more hurt because the only reason you told me now was so you could feel better, not so I could feel better. And so I love that
Yeah.
you bring that. That's really powerful, I think, for us, because we think, because we're trained, like religion says, you have to admit what you've done. You have to confess. And if you don't confess, well, they know they were hurt. And so sometimes that confession is for us rather than for the person. So I think that's really powerful self-awareness to say, is this actually for me or someone else? And, grief is part of that hurt space too, where we have these hurts that we feel, but we forget how much grief we carry. And grief is actually typically carried in the lungs, where we have heartache in the heart and the lungs are behind the heart. And so sometimes we don't realize that if we have grief, we can't move. Because think about it, when we have a broken heart, or when we're going through something catastrophic and we're feeling that intense loss and, that intense sadness because we love something so much, we feel like we can't breathe. That's like one of the indicators. I can't breathe. This is locking in. But if we pause and if we allow ourselves to pull in all the air we can from our lungs and envision our heart being sucked from the lungs into that lungway and then blown out, it actually is really good at relieving some of that tension. So maybe we can just breathe for a second. All the grief, all the thoughts, all the pain filling up our chest, and then out. Like,
yes.
Yeah. My grandbaby the other day, he sits down to do something and he goes, I'm like, wow, you sigh a lot. Are you okay, kid? And then my daughter's like, you do that all the time. I'm like, oh, I do, because I'm constantly clearing my heart, not just of my grief, but the grief of other people, or the grief of the disappointment, or even that time has passed and I didn't get this done. Because I think a lot of us get stuck in that grief space where we think if we didn't have a death, then we don't have grief. I don't think we realize a lot of times that grief comes from the loss of anything. We can grieve a job. We can grieve a life that we thought we would have that we didn't. And most of the time when we're grieving people, even if they were an asshole, we're stuck in this grief loop because we imagined a life that we were going to have with them. It wasn't even that great to begin with. When I went through my divorce, I was feeling grief. It was a death. And it was actually really hard to process because that mofo was still alive. That's not fair. Like, he's not allowed to go happy while we're all being miserable and destitute. That's not fair. And so all of those emotions to process through. What are some of the emotions or some of the things that you did to process some of those emotions?
Oh, to begin with, I started seeking community because I was trying really hard to stop drinking, because initially I was drinking those feelings and that was not good for anybody. But I was seeking community really and trying to find alternative ways to just doing things. The first time I ever went to a sound bath and like the drums and doing all that was all a whole magical thing that opened up for me. I took one of my friends with me, and her and I later went on a hunt to find sound bowls, to buy just a bowl, because we both wanted one sound, we just wanted a bowl. And so I had found a journal, and it was a journal that I had had since I was probably 17. And I only wrote in this when I was depressed, when I was in a bad space, when I was like, there was nothing happy in this journal as I'm like flipping through pages. And I was like, oh my God, if I died tomorrow and my kids or my mom or anyone read this, they would think that my life was horrible. And it's not horrible. These were some bad times, but like, oh girl, why are you carrying this with you everywhere you go? Because it had moved with me every time I had moved. And I'm at this point in my 30s, right? So I've had this journal for a really long time. I thought, I got to burn this. Like, this isn't trash. This is burned. We got to burn this. And as I was randomly ripping pages out of it, like not reading the whole page, but just like a skim of like, oh yeah, that's got to go. And that's got to go. That was the first time I'd ever experienced that type of release with the fire. And ever since then, anytime I have things that I don't want to hold on to anymore, I will write that out till my arm is numb, and then we're lighting it on fire. And so that was a really, really important thing, that like something that I just felt so called to, that I had never experienced before. And since then, I've probably done it a million times. But, feelings towards people and things, write that letter that you're never going to send, but burn that bitch. Do not hold on to it, because you don't need to hold those things. And so it's helped me with a lot. It's helped me with a lot of forgiveness from others. It's helped me to forgive myself. But that's probably been it's such a simple thing, but it had such a big impact. Just burning that journal, it shifted big parts of me.
I find that when we're healing something really deep and buried inside, the more simple we get, the more effective it is. And when we get really complicated in rituals being a certain way or to the T, or we overthink, now we're up in our head and we're not even in that unconscious, because our unconscious is like a 2-year-old. And, I thought you were saying at first that you had a separate journal for all the dark and dirty stuff. And I actually do. I was gifted a journal by one of my dearest friends, also a Melanie. And it's a black journal, and it says on the front, 0 fucks. And so I'm like, and I'm a journal whore. Like, I really am. I have one for everything. I have one in every room wherever I go. And I love my journals because for me, it's how I process. It's how I see the patterns in my thought process. If it's been 3 years and I flip open a journal and I'm complaining about something that I complained about before, I can see that pattern. And then I can see what I'm not seeing. Or I can call Melanie and be like, hey, can you tune into some of my shit and see if there's a negative perspective in there? But before, I had people that I could go to. That was my source. And so in this black book, it literally says on the first page, this is the ugly journal. This is for processing the ugly thoughts. If you're reading this and you get offended, you're probably in it and it's your own damn fault. And I even have told my kids, this just goes straight into the trash if I die. There's pages where I did rip them out. And actually in ritual practice, the ripping it out of the book rather than cutting is part of it, because you're severing ties. And so I really love that you bring that. If you're the type that you want to keep them, I recommend having an ugly journal and then a positive journal.
I didn't know that about the severing with the ripping, though.
You just do the things that you didn't know was a thing until you do it. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this is a thing.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I love what you said about there's no wrong way to do it. What do you feel? Do that, because that's probably what you need to do. That's how I ended up burning that journal. I thought, I need to throw this away. And I was like, oh no, this has to be burned. We're burning this.
Transmute it. So I'm curious because you said the sound bowls and the sound and the healing work came after. Do you think that part of you dying and being a catalyst is what guided you to find some of these gifts? Or do you think you would have found them eventually without that?
Definitely. There is a part of me that died in that. That was a rebirth for me. And though it didn't happen necessarily the same time that he passed, I had to shed a whole lot of stuff. I had to work through a lot. When I finally came up for air, I knew that the path that I had been on had been altered for sure. And that definitely led me to where I'm at. That's so crazy to just to think about where it could have been or where I could have been.
Some of my deaths, because there's the death of people and then there's the death of myself and the death of the life that I had. When my divorce happened, I didn't really see it coming, although I should have, because 2 weeks before, I remember I had this 2-year-old tantrum with God at the time, because I was very religious. And I said, I've been promised this type of a relationship, this type of partner, and I don't have it. And I followed all the checklist. I've done all of the things. I can do no more. I would like this blessing, please, God. And I was like, I demand this. I've done my part. You haven't done your part. Come on, big man, give it. And within 2 weeks, he let me know he was leaving for another woman. And he'd been having an affair for 1.5 years and multiple affairs. The funny thing is, 2 days before he told me this, I got pulled over by a cop. So the neighborhood I lived in at the time was brand new housing. And I had been there for 11 years. And 6 months before that, they put in a stop sign on what used to be a dirt road. And then it was a dirt road that you take as a shortcut. Then they paved it. Then they put in the stop sign after it had been paved for a while. So it was a slow process. And sometimes my autopilot brain forgot that there was a stop sign. So I roll the stop sign and I get pulled over. And for me, I'm the worst lie. Like, I don't lie because my face will tell it, and I come up with the weirdest things, and I usually will start crying because it's like so out of integrity with me. And I'm so mad that I'm having to like conceal something because I'm not here to shut up. And so it's like, so I start sobbing to this cop, and I make up this big old lie. And the lie is that my husband just left me. That was the lie. And I was emotional because of that. And I'm sobbing. And I create this whole story that I thought was my imagination.
Oh,
and
no.
2 days later, it all actually was happening. I was like, did I create that? I'm like, no, I didn't create that. This has been going on for 1.5 years. And I knew something was off. And I can read all my journal entries and I can see the pattern. And he did let me go, by the way. He let me go. I didn't.
Well, that's good.
Got a warning. I was like, and this is a stop sign. I didn't remember because I'm emotional. And this is why, like, that was so out of character for me because I'm very much at, like, I know I speed sometimes, and I'm very much like, yep, give me the ticket. I got somewhere to be. That's why I was speeding. Like, let's just hurry this up. So it was so out of character. And as I reflected on that, I was like, I think I kind of channeled what was coming in that moment and felt the intensity. And it was like that panic feeling that opened the portal for the emotion and the information to come through. But then after he left, I left my whole life. Like, my religion was based on my marriage. And so now that fell apart. My house was gone. Even my car was gone. And literally every identity I had, all my friends, because they couldn't look at me without going, how are you? And I was like, I was great until you reminded me that I should be sad. So all of my friendships went away because I had to find new friends. And it was a really challenging death and rebirth that I didn't expect. And then I laughed because I'm like, well, I did tell God, I'd like this, please. Like, expectation here. I've done all this work and I've followed every task. And now I look at it, even shortly after, I looked at it as the freedom that I was never brave enough to give myself. Because I had already started my healing practice, but it was when that death happened and I shed every condition, every business structure, every formality of looking professional or not, every filter of how I presented or healed, that it actually opened that up. That's actually when drums came to me too, right after. So that's why I asked that. What other gifts you found that have kind of opened up for you with that grief?
Oh, I was just talking about this the other night. The big thing for me has been my empathy for other people, and not just being more open to other people's emotions and feelings without them even having to express them to me, and recognizing that I have a knowing of, oh no, you're not okay. And I have a presence that lets people feel safe with me because I am a safe space, a non-judgmental space, and I can hold space for you to feel your feelings. And if you just want to feel your feelings, I can hold space for that. If you want help moving those feelings, I can help you with. I can literally help you with that. I have tools now, that I can actually help you with. And then the drums, I went to a retreat that you facilitated, and that I was actually drumming that my first drum the other night. Someone at a thing that I had hosted was like, oh, this drum is amazing. What is this? And I was like, oh, that's my first drum. That's my buffalo drum, and being able to help other people process and do those things, and also be able to help them make drums or just drum in general, being able to give people the gift of, here's this drum for you to drum. You can drum yourself. I can drum you. Like those feelings, it's been really amazing.
So let's talk about some of like the psychic gifts that have opened up through grief and those spiritual gifts. So for me, it's funny because when people pass away, they show up in dreams, and it's like you're a regular person talking, and it takes me a while for me to go, but you're dead, but you're here, but you're dead, but you're here. And they're like, And anyways, this is what I want to say. Like my mother-in-law, when she showed up in the dreams, I let her have it with that anger. And I was like, I wasn't ready for you to go yet. Like, how could you? And she said, but I was. And I was like, oh, okay. And it was very similar with my Mama Kay. And her expression was, I feel so much love in so many different places. and my kids are spread out. This way I can be present with all of them. And which is powerful to me because she wasn't my biological mom and she still counted us as her kids. And, you know, the grandkids that she got to enjoy were all from non-biological children. And even her daughters are my sisters. They are my family. I still keep them. Like, even though my dad's remarried, like, you're still mine. There's something that needs to be said about the way our brain changes in grief. And I have this theory that in that cracking open of the brain chemistry and how it changes and like that fuzziness, that sometimes that's where our spiritual gifts come through and start to open. Do you feel like you experienced an intensified version of that? Or like, did you always have these abilities?
I definitely feel like I had them, but I didn't know that that's what it was. Like, I had no clue. And it wasn't until I started paying attention to things. So after our Mexico retreat with the sacred perspective healing technique and really learning those gifts and getting to use them in real life, you know, on strangers, and then coming home and starting to practice, and the messages that I was getting that weren't necessarily related to me tuning in and identifying, there were other pieces coming. And at first it was like, oh, I'm not going to say that. Like, I'm not saying that to her. I don't even know what that means. Why would I say that? And this thought is in my head, and what I ended up doing is saying, Spirit, like, I want to be able to give these messages, but they don't always make sense. And I'm afraid to say it. I need a sign that I know I have to say it. Like, we're not going to clear if I don't say it. And I get right here, I get goosebumps just right here. Like right, the top of my head. It's happening right now because I'm
tip of your head where if you had a yarmulke on.
Yes.
For those listening and not seeing.
And I go, every time I'm like, oh, Spirit has a message. So we're gonna derail just a second. And I'm going to say this to you. And if it doesn't mean anything, you know, but it always means something to them every single time. And so being open to all of this, all of it, and grief creates that, right? Because you're looking for signs and getting signs from your loved ones. I think that's the piece that opened me up, knowing that I could get signs and getting those signs and like literally seeing a hummingbird sitting on the flowers that are in my neighbor's yard on his hibiscus, that what my grandma has this beautiful rose of Sharon bush in front of her house. And my neighbors have them all along my fence line. And I was out watering my flowers last night and there's a hummingbird sitting, not flying, fluttering about, sitting. And I was like, oh, Grandma, I see you. And then it like buzzed around me a little and went away. And it was like, hummingbirds are my grandma. And I know that 100% know that. And so trusting those things has created an openness, and just, I think it's like anything that we do, the more we do it, the more clear it becomes, or, you know, the stronger we become, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing. The more we trust that, I've gotten to a point now where I don't even have to be in session. Sometimes I'm just with someone and I am getting a message and I'm like, I'm going to say this thing to you and it might seem really weird. And it's not necessarily messages from their past loved ones. It's a lot of times it's to do with something they're going through in general. And
be witness sometimes is a gift.
Yeah. And so I've been less afraid to give those messages than I was before.
I love that you offer this tactile way that we can see that our loved ones are with us. When my Mama Kay passed, I sat there and I was like, okay, I'm going to make something really difficult. I live in the desert. I'm going to say a butterfly, but not any butterfly, a blue butterfly, because blue butterflies even exist? Because I don't see them here. And then within like 5 minutes of saying that and being like, hey, blue butterfly, that's going to be my sign when Mama Kay's around. That's what I want. And I open my phone, my Instagram opens up, and the very first thing is an illustration of a blue butterfly. And I was like, oh my goodness, for Pete's sake, here it is. Like, that was too easy. Wait a minute. I might need to do something else. But then when we were in Mexico together at your immersive training, like there were morphos everywhere. We now have them tattooed on us. And Colombia, when I went there and I was like, ooh, I hope this is the right place, because it was the first time and it was kind of nervous the first time I went to Colombia. And it was like, big, huge morpho goes by my face. I'm like, oh, Holly, relax. You're just bringing anxiety for no reason. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. And so she's shown up in blue butterflies literally so often and different forms that I don't expect. And so sometimes we say, I would like this sign. And then we get to see the magic of how things can unfold, even when we say, well, this is a challenge because that doesn't exist here. And then it does. So we can't doubt it. So I feel like doubt sometimes is what blocks us the most.
Oh, 100%. And I didn't realize how many people were out there that didn't realize you can ask for signs. You can tell your mom, show me this when you're near me so that I know you're here. I went on a camping trip shortly after Carl had passed with his family. And the whole entire trip, there was a black and white butterfly in our camp. Just like, and I knew, like, that was like thing, that was him. Like, he was with us. And I love butterflies. And he knew I loved butterflies. And so it was not a girly butterfly, though. It was black and white. Just, I had never seen a black and white butterfly like that. And fast forward probably 2 years after, I was in a situation I should not have been in. And I had drank more than I should have. And I was leaving the people I was with someone that I didn't know. And I looked up on this sign on the street, and there is a big black and white butterfly on this sign. And it was like the sign smacked me in the forehead and was like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I am not supposed to be here. And I just turned around and walked away from the person and went and found my people. And I had a moment of sobriety, a moment of clarity, but it was that sign, literal sign that was like, hello, you're going to get murdered, lady. What are you doing? I think it's important to know those signs, or to not be afraid to ask for them. And it can be ridiculous. It can be something so ridiculous. And I promise you, your loved ones will show up and they will show through, because they want you to know they're there, And
I feel like, especially when there's more shock involved, they tend to come through more than if it was expected, because there's this completion that's there.
Yeah.
And also, I think their ability to come in and connect with us is based on the emotional connection we had with them, because emotions are how we jump through dimensions and are able to layer in through those veils. So I love getting to hear kind of how your gifts started to launch through this cracking and this breaking of the heart and grief. It really stood out to me when you said you had gratitude even for the anger. And I want to hear how you can have gratitude for being angry. That piece just seems so counter connected of how can you be mad and be glad that you're mad.
It's kind of that love and hate thing. Can't have hate if there wasn't love. Being able to look at all of it and try to find the gratitude in it. I'm grateful I need a new roof right now because I have a roof to need. I'm never going to be grateful for the passing of my loved ones, right? Like, that's not what it is, but trying to find gratitude in the lessons that we learn from their passing, whatever that may be. And it's going to be different for everybody. Find the light when we're in the dark, because sometimes it's really, really hard. And I've been in some really, really dark places, and being able to look at those places now and express gratitude for them, for what has come from it and where I am now.
That deep death and rebirth. And it's like, no, it doesn't ever feel good when we're shedding parts of ourselves, especially our identity, that we literally, this is the only thing that we have is the ego of who we are. And when we let that go, it's not a pleasant experience, but we can have gratitude and really make the most of that experience, as intense as it is, make it worth it.
100%. And I think just being able to come out of things and look at it in a different way. Even my excessive drinking after he passed, the gratitude I express for that experience, because I know alcoholism runs in my family on both sides. Like, that's not a secret, but seeing how slippery of a slope that could be, and how easy it is to fall into going from one beer to 2 beers to 3 beers every day. And, oh, we don't need dinner. We got a good buzz. Let's just have another beer, and how casually that can happen. that's another lesson that had I not gone through that experience, I may not have found as quickly as I did and realized as quickly as I did, like, oh, that is something that could be a problem for me. And I don't want it to be.
I love the gifts and the lessons themselves, even though they were uncomfortable and painful. Even just admiring and feeling the inspiration of your journey and how much the world would have missed out on so much by you not claiming that and being just another drunk girl at a bar again, rather than actually offering something to the world and offering another option and being that safe container for other people who are hurting. I absolutely adore you. And I'm so grateful that you chose to let the gift shine out and go to the depths of yourself and find a way to become this newest version. Yay! Until the next death and rebirth.
No, thank you. A lot of my key moments or, aha moments came from times with you. So I appreciate you, and I have so much gratitude for the medicine that you teach and the freedom that you give us within that, as far as here's a way, but there's no wrong. So make it how you want it, make it yours, because it is yours, right?
Just activating you. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. So thank you for that. Yes, thank you.
Anything else that you would like to share that you feel would be valuable for those listening who maybe are stuck in grief, or maybe they're already starting to open up gifts and they're like, oh my gosh, what the heck is this? And am I going crazy? Is this just the grief processing?
I would say trust your intuition, trust that instinct is probably the one thing that I wish I would have done sooner. And if you're holding on to feelings, whether they're positive or negative, or just if you're really in that like downward spiral of it, write it out, burn it, really. And sometimes you have to write it out a couple times because it comes back. It's not gone forever, but it can be, and it can be easier every time it comes back because we're processing it. And so it gets a little easier when I feel those strings pull and I go, oh, okay. Yeah, I know how to handle this. I've been here before. I know how to handle this. So it gets a little less hard. I wouldn't say easier, but just a little less hard.
A little less hard.
A little less hard.
Well, thank you so much for being on with us, Melanie. How can people reach you if they're looking to receive some support?
You can find me on the beautyofperspective.com under the practitioner link. And you can also find me at infinitymooncreations.com on my website. I have all kinds of different events, donation-based stuff.
Okay, lovelies. This has been the Sacred Unweaving podcast. If you need more information, visit my website, thebeautyperspective.com. Check out the practitioner page and really get to dive in and connect with Melanie. Love you guys. Thanks for being on, Melanie.
Bye. Thank you.